Hello listeners. Welcome back to Storytime FM. In this video we will be exploring r/AskReddit. What's the trashiest wedding you've been to? Let's jump right in. The best man screwed the groom's mother between the meal and the dancing. The groom finds out and punches the best man, breaking his hand. The best man drives away and gets stopped by the police for drunk driving. Being a wedding photographer is awesome. Let's see what some other people wrote. My friend group and I talk about this wedding to this day, and probably will for the rest of our lives. The bride and groom decided to do things on a very, very small budget. That's fine. Frugal weddings and budget weddings can be beautiful and nice. There is a difference between a frugal wedding and a cheap wedding, however, and this was cheap. For instance, the wedding was in July. They decided to hold it in a non-air-conditioned park shelter. The decorations were actual trash. The bride decided me and the other bridesmaids needed tiny top hats, which she made from discarded styrofoam cups. Mine had ants in it. She asked me to be the mo. I was flattered but confused. She'd had 3 moths before me, and they all quit for various reasons, mostly baby daddy drama related. She wanted live music but wouldn't pay a pianist. My friend Steven's sister said she'd play the wedding march on a keyboard for $50. Said sister couldn't actually play the piano, but she did the pre-recorded wedding march song. Nobody could tell the difference because the woman in charge of baking the cake got shit-faced the day before and was baking the cake in the non-air-conditioned park shelter's little kitchen while listening to the radio. Very loudly. The bride and groom tried to write their own vows, got in a fight over it, and didn't tell the officiant until the day of that there were no vows. Fortunately, he was on it and had backup vows ready to go. The bride hadn't tried on her dress, which she'd bought from AliExpress, until the day of. It was way too small and we had to rip out the back and safety pin in some satiny white fabric. Which would have been great, if the dress hadn't been off-white. The groom made comments and it turned out that the whole dress thing was based on his mom offering to pay for the dress, then rescinding because she had to bail out his brother. My friend, instead of going to an actual store and buying a dress, picked one off of AliExpress. This would have been less weird if I hadn't been dress shopping with her like 3 times because her mom wouldn't pick out a mother of the bride dress. The groom's entire family including his best man and his 2 groomsmen left right after the meal. Spaghetti, green beans, and McDonald's orange drink, was served. The DJ, my friend Steven and his Bose speakers, didn't know this and tried to announce the groom's dance with his mom. His mom had left. Apparently his family was furious that it was a dry venue. The only member of the family left was the ring bearer, who it turns out was forgotten. We had to take him home because his family wouldn't come get him. The groom slept through the rehearsal and showed up to the wedding drunk. We had to put another friend on bouncer duty because 2 of the bride's aunts tried to walk away with the cash envelope. We gave him the envelope because he was the tallest and we figured he could outrun the aunts. The bride's brother was originally on envelope duty but we caught him taking a 50 out of the envelope, so we had to take it from him. We had to politely inform the best man he couldn't smoke in the portajohn. We had portajohns instead of actual working bathrooms. The worst, though, was the photographer. As Mo, I was informed day of that I had to keep the photographer 100 feet away from the ring bearer and flower girls at all times. He was a registered sex offender, but also the bride's uncle, and he volunteered to do the pictures for free, so he ended up using a telephoto lens. Because he couldn't get close enough to the wedding party to take the pictures. They divorced a couple months later after the house they were staying in burned to the ground. I have no idea to this day why they even got married. Wedding was in a suburban driveway. The maid of honor stole the bouquet from someone's garden and the best man proudly announced he had shoplifted the rings. The groom wore a button-down shirt that said, "Fuck off," in fancy lettering. The bride stopped in the middle of the vows to tell her mother to get that fucking kid out of here. It was her 2nd kid by the previous bloke. When it was over, we apologized to the celebrant. He said he'd seen worse. Woo boy. This is my time to shine. So my uncle was a preacher but also owned a restaurant. A 16-year-old got married to her 17-year-old boyfriend in the back room. Her name was Candy. After the ceremony she opened her wedding gifts like it was her birthday. One of the waitresses, Brenda, had given her old lingerie as a gift. I remember during the reception, Candy went out back to throw the lingerie into a dumpster while Brenda sang, "These Boots Were Made for Walking" on karaoke. For their honeymoon, her mom bought them a room at the Holiday Inn around the corner, but they got bored so they came home. The bride made a speech thanking her in-laws for financial assistance for the event. Her mother was not thanked and she was furious. There was a long head table for bridal party and parents. It was made out of small tables pushed together covered by one long tablecloth. The mother pulled a small table out of the arrangement, catching the tablecloth, and nearly destroying the head table set up. Now the bride got angry and there was much back and forth with various family members attempting to make peace. The mother refused to push back her table and began to invite others to sit with her, all people who were not meant to be seated at the front. Mother of bride continued to sit there and talk shit about her daughter, the bride, to anyone who would listen. Let's look at some more comments. I was actually the bartender but it was a hoot. First, wedding was outside and it stormed violently. Groom was hammered pre-wedding. Hit on all the bartenders. Then the DJ got hammered, made lewd comments to women in the microphone. Then basically everyone was hammered, knocked over the wedding cake which also happened to be a table with many candles, so the place caught on fire. Good times. Often wonder how that marriage worked out. A wedding on the beach behind Hooters. The officiant stood next to a trash bin. As if it was planned, the trash collector pulled up during the vows. Did he wait to change the bag? Absolutely not. Children at the wedding swarmed the couple like the flies around the trash can just after the kiss, stepping all over her dress. She bent over to adjust her sandal and a pack of Marlboro Reds fell out of the bust along with her right breast. It felt like we were rubber-necking instead witnessing a marriage. I once worked a wedding where come time for the first dance no one could find the groom. Turns out, he went to the resort's shooting barn to shoot clay pigeons. Upon learning this news, the bride reacted by cursing up a storm on the dance floor. Ceremony was in a park, not booked or decorated, just showed up and found a spot. Reception was at a scout hall. No decorations again, and for catering the bride's family went through Red Rooster drive-thru and got a bunch of whole chickens and chips. Like, 5 different cars went through one after the other and ordered. They didn't even pre-order. Groom and all his friends were high as kites and only reason bride wasn't is because she announced she was knocked up. Groom and his mates bought their dirt bikes and after eating went out and rode them around the hall. Was so loud and muddy. Let's look at some more comments. Both of my middle sister's weddings. Don't get me wrong, she's the sane one of my sisters and I actually really love her, but she has a, shall we say, unique sense of style. Wedding one was while she was working as a carny, and was held after closing time on the Midway at some podunk county fair. I may well have been the only sober person there, and there were definitely more tattoos than teeth in attendance. She wound up leaving him when he turned out to be an abusive self-centered twat who contributed nothing to taking care of their kid. Wedding 2, just last year, was mostly okay, and Bill is a really stand-up guy. But y'all, the whole wedding theme was camo. My sister wore a camouflage wedding dress and matching Crocs. Bill wore jeans and a dress shirt with a camo vest. The frigging cake was covered in camo-patterned ribbons and IDK where the hell she got camo-patterned silk roses but the cake had a pile of those too. I went to a wedding in a funeral home once. Drove by it 3 times before realizing that it was in fact the correct address for the venue. Reception and ceremony were there. Completely dry wedding too. Surely that video of the bride walking down the backyard aisle while dirty dancing to her own shitty recorded cover of Crazy Bitch has got to be up around here somewhere. A family member was at a wedding where the groom's mother was feeding Pakistani sweets to the bride. She dropped one on her expensive wedding dress. They can be sticky and messy. And the bride says, "You ruined my wedding dress, you bitch." Grooms tells his wife to apologize. She refused, so the groom tells her she's getting divorced and leaves with his family. Everyone else start leaving too. They had signed the wedding papers a day before. Oof. Let's see what other comments there are. There were no tables and chairs. Like none. They had an open bar but no fucking chairs. Everyone had to put their drink on the ground and hold their plate to eat. It was fucking crazy. Everyone just assumed that some sort of terrible thing happened where the tables and chair people didn't bring them, but afterwards I asked her, the bride, what happened, and she just said, "Oh, we would have had to pay extra for that." Probably my dad's second marriage. Along the banks of a river with trailer homes in the background. He's wearing a tuxedo t-shirt and rainbow mirror sunglasses. The ceremony took place at noon. He'd been drinking since 5 a.m. I had to walk one of the bridesmaids down a flight of steps as she was legally blind. And someone asked me if I was going to bang her. Sighs. A friend of the family is a wedding photographer. We went to dinner with her family a few weeks ago and she explained the most bizarre wedding she had ever been to, which happened to be that same day, and involved someone we all know. Wedding was behind a trailer in a trailer park, folding chairs clearly labeled, "Property of School." There were 2 church pews, and several 5-gallon buckets turned upside down. Some of the wedding party arrived on riding mowers. The bride was wearing some screen-printed t-shirt, jeans, and a veil made from cheesecloth. The groom was wearing a jean vest with no shirt underneath and torn jeans. The bride had met the groom just over 3 months prior, as the groom was still married to his first wife at the time. Divorce takes 90 days here. Do the math. Most of the guests were dressed like they were in the middle of doing yard work. Reception was in the same area. Several cases of PBR and Miller Lite, supermarket pre-boxed cheese and cracker spreads, and a few Bojangles fried chicken boxes. At my aunt's wedding with her new husband. Got drugged by one of her step-sons, almost got raped. Luckily one of my real cousins noticed I was gone for a long time and looked for me. He's the only one in the family who knew about my anxiety, so he worried about that. Caught the guy taking my shirt off by the kitchen counter while I was half unconscious. He called the police and I was taken home safely. Let's look at some more comments. A family member of mine's second wedding reception was held inside an indoor gun range. The groom was obviously an avid hunter because the entire wedding party was wearing camouflage suits, and the bonus was the open bar, consisting on 2 kegs of Coors Light sitting trash cans filled with ice. I don't even know where to begin. Ceremony was comprised of immediate family, then followed by a reception with all guests in a relatively nice hotel banquet hall. An hour in at 7 p.m. the open bar was completely closed down because multiple guests were throwing up in the bathroom sinks, causing flooding. The groom was so wasted even before the ceremony but was blackout by the time of reception. During the first dance he kept his hands in his cargo pant khakis the entire time and ate dinner sitting on the floor in a corner of the hall while the bride sat at the head table alone. About 2 hours in, the groom randomly left and slept at their house while the bride stayed in the newlywed suite by herself. They are now separated, as you may have assumed by this point. A 2 friends from college wedding was just awkward. Bride sewed her own dress, which was a size too big. She's really slim and tiny, so she looked like she had a very conservative satin nightgown on that was a rush job. Their first kiss was at the altar. When they finished, the pastor said, "Ah, come on, you can do better than that." During part of the ceremony there was parents' blessing. Groom's family was quick and private, really sweet. Bride's parents were loud and they bawled while talking for 15 minutes each. Reception was potluck and not enough food for those attending. Wedding colors were baby blue and lavender. A mutual friend was DJ and the mother of the bride passed him a note to read aloud to the guests. Poor guy then had to go. Groom, your mill says you can pet the kitties now. The previous spring break mill had gotten bride a baggy, standard size t-shirt with kittens on it. Kittens just so happened to be about bust height. I offered to do flowers, boutonnieres, corsages, centerpieces. But the wedding party didn't store them as I had suggested, so the next day they were wilted and really sad. Did I mention this was a dry wedding? It was in the middle of absolutely nowhere. It was a 5 p.m. wedding and there was no food served, and we couldn't just run out and get McDonald's or something because there was nothing around. We had to help set up tables. We had to fill out our own thank you cards. They even had an example for us to follow. Dear, thank you for the blank. We'll use it to blank. Then, they asked us to help take down the tables as well. I refused to help and got the hell out of there. Also, no cake. Here are some more comments I found. Camo print wedding dress that was borderline see-through. Walked down the aisle to the Scooby-Doo theme. No, nobody knows why they chose that song, including the couple themselves. They divorced a few months later after they both stopped cleaning the house in an act of defiance against one another. Everyone got super drunk before wedding starts. Even groom throw up on the stage while bride is hardly walk straight to him with drunk AF face. Come and think of it, maybe funniest one. They met and married within months. He was 40s, she was upper 20s or low 30s. I was shocked she was getting married, shocked this was the guy, and shocked that I was invited. Felt like I had to go. He had like 3 pre-teens that did whatever they wanted and lived in the backwoods. Wedding was at his cabin property, potluck style. Wedding was just them standing in the yard. No seating, no grouping of friends or families or sides of an aisle. Just hang out and watch them do their thing. No photographer. When they kissed, everyone pulled out guns and shot them off. I hadn't noticed the guns or seen that anyone was carrying, so it was a shock. Then the happy couple rode off on an ATV into the woods for a victory lap. They came back and we all ate swamp people food and everyone was sloshed. I left early with a friend and on the drive home we were like, so what the fuck was that? They obviously divorced shortly after. Let's see what some other people wrote. Ooh, I've got one of these, but it was a fake wedding, unknown to the guests ahead of time. Many of the details are things we found out later. So, the wedding. Everything felt very tense, and groom looked like he might cry standing at the altar. Bride entered in a dress that didn't fit properly. It had a large long skirt with hoop, but the dress was too short and the hoop was too big, so it sat up on an angle and bounced around awkwardly as she moved. The ceremony itself seemed quite strained, and having recently been married ourselves, the wife and I noticed that the celebrant didn't say the specific line legally required for a wedding in Australia, and no paperwork was signed, also required in Australia. At the reception, almost all of Table 1, which had bride, groom's families, turned out it was groom's family that left immediately after the reception started. Groom's dad was meant to pay for the bar tab but did not do so before leaving. Bride and groom avoided each other apart from an incredibly awkward first dance. They separated weeks later. So, flashing back a bit. Bride and groom were quite young, but with bride several years older than groom. They'd been dating for a while, and a lot of people in our circle of friends had been getting married. Bride was very set on marriage, and groom proposed willingly. As time went on, groom was getting cold feet. He didn't want to break up with bride, or even necessarily to call off the engagement, but wasn't ready to be married. Bride was not pleased, and pressured groom to continue. Groom's parents were in very poor health at the time, and when groom tried to say he wasn't ready again, bride started to harass his parents about him trying to back out. Groom foolishly agreed to go ahead with the wedding in order to stop this harassment. Bride was still not happy with groom's attitude, and asked the celebrant to come talk to them, hoping he would talk groom around. Celebrant, being an absolute legend, and really, just doing his job properly, refused to marry them once he was told that one party was unwilling. Offering the compromise that he could officiate a commitment ceremony which is not legally binding. Bride took him up on this offer, but insisted on not telling anyone and pretending it was a proper wedding. In Australia, some paperwork needs to be filed 30 days in advance, so there was no time to get an alternative celebrant, and there were evidently a lot of deposits which were not refundable so close to the event. That's all we've got time for today. Join us tomorrow for some more comments. In the meantime, leave a comment with your stories and thoughts below. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed and want to see more. Until next time, listeners.